Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We'll get started in just a moment. We're so glad to have you here this evening. As we wait for folks to enter, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from and the name of your group if you're in one. Welcome, everyone. So happy to have you here this evening. We have a lot of people registered and joining us from the waiting room. So as we get people into the webinar, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from and the name of the group if you're in one. Oh, seeing people from all over New Jersey, South Jersey, North Jersey, the shore, all over. Central, excellent. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. So happy to have you here this evening. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know what part of the state you're joining us from and the name of your local group if you're in one. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. We're going to get started in just a moment. We have a few more people trickling in from the waiting room. Just to let you know that we are at full capacity. We have over 700 people registered and 500 slots tonight. So if you do hop out, please know that you may not be able to get back in, but we will send you the link to the recording afterwards, after all of the interviews have been conducted. All right, let's get started. So before we begin the interview, we'll go over a few logistics. This call is including closed captioning. To turn on closed captioning, you can click the CC button on the bottom of your screen. This call is being recorded. All of the materials will be sent to you following tonight's call. We will be disablling chat for the interview portion of the call, so just that you're aware that that will be happening. If you need help getting the closed captioning started, check the chat. There's a help file for you in the chat. So before we begin this evening, now that we've gone over the logistics, I want to make sure that you know what ION is. ION stands for Indivisible One New Jersey. This is the statewide network representing over 40 active indivisible groups and thousands of activists throughout New Jersey. The website appears on the slide here. We encourage you to check it out. Right now it's in development. If you want to volunteer and help us develop it even faster, you're welcome to do that. But we are happy to have you here as part of the ION network. So ION's mission is going to appear on the next slide. I'm not going to read it to you, but this mission statement is available on the website. We encourage you to look it over and decide if you'd like to join us if you are not already officially part of ION. So some of the strategies that we use, we foster connections among indivisible groups in the state on issues of common concern. We work collaboratively to lobby state and federal officials. We participate in electoral work with the aim of supporting more progressive candidates in state and federal elections. And we engage in public outreach efforts, such as hosting public forums like this and working on traditional and social media. All right. So now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Andrew. Andrew is Indivisible's National Advocacy Director.
All right. Hi, folks. Thanks, Marla. Hey, everyone. I'm Andrew O'Neill. As Marla said, I'm the National Advocacy Director with Indivisible. This week, I have the great honor of interviewing Ras Baraka, Mikey Sherrill, Sean Spiller, Steve Fulop, all Democratic candidates for governor of New Jersey. Tonight, we'll be hearing from Newark Mayor Ras Baraka about his candidacy and how he plans to leverage state power to safeguard democracy and act as a counterweight to Trump's agenda to protect New Jerseyans should he become the next governor of New Jersey. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we will be disabling the chat during the interview. This allows for a distraction-free experience. We really appreciate you understanding. So get your final greetings, drop your Indivisible group names in the chat real quick, because we are going to turn it off in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Now, with that, and without further ado, please welcome Mayor Ras Baraka. Mayor Baraka, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So we've got 5 or 6 topics that we want to cover tonight, and you're going to notice a theme here, right? In light of the emergency that is the ongoing Trump takeover and dismantling of our federal government and our democracy, obviously we're going to be touching on that pretty heavily. On that bright note, we'll kick things off with a rather big question just to get us started. In your view, what can New Jersey's elected leaders be doing to better leverage state power, to act as that counterweight to the dangerous policies of the Trump agenda and his administration, and the flagrant violations of law and the Constitution? Right, it's a crisis. What should New Jersey's elected leaders be doing to really lead in that fight?
I mean, first, thank you for that question. I think we should be in the immediate sense, at least opening up our mouths, at least standing up for what's happening. You see, they began to raid in Newark indiscriminately. We stood up for the Fourth Amendment with community-based organizations. Today, we shut down a building that was designed to have ICE in there who were violating municipal and state laws. We, went to court to make them order to show cause to us. I mean, that's in the least bit what we can be doing. I think statewide, we should be partnering with other governors around the country who are creating a network of folks, progressive ideas to push back against what's happening, creating opportunities for legal aid. We already have Office of Tenant Legal Services in Newark. We work with our partners around immigration rights and immigration attorneys. We should be doing that statewide and funding organizations that are protecting immigrants, that are protecting the LGBTQ community, that are protecting doctors who are providing medicine and healthcare procedures for folks, for women, for LGBTQ community. We can do those things, and then ultimately we need to invest our resources in people, right, and working families, invest in small businesses, invest in communities, invest in medical and healthcare services. This is our this crisis can provide an opportunity for us. As New Jersey is crying about its financial situation, and the government is cutting off dollars, we have an opportunity now to say we need that money back from the super wealthy. The money we gave to the super wealthy in the state, we need it back. We need to repeal the Christie tax cuts, bring that money back to us so we can invest in the things that are necessary for us here to protect our communities' democratic rights, to expand Medicaid, to have discussions like single payer systems, public options, Medicare for all. It's time for us to go all the way to the wall with it. And I think we have a great backdrop to do this in, and we can't be afraid. It's not a time to run to the middle. We have to stand on our values as loudly and as strongly as we possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Right, now is the time to stand on your values. You mentioned protections for the LGBTQ community. That's a great transition to my next question. Today is Trans Day of Visibility, and of course, with the presidential administration determined to restrict access to trans healthcare and punish those who provide it, it's really critical in every state, but that New Jersey codify those protections for medically necessary life-saving care. It's my understanding that currently gender-affirming care is protected in New Jersey by some executive orders, but is not robustly protected in state law. But there are efforts underway in the state legislature to remedy this. Relatedly, the reversal of Roe v. Wade has caused many of us to consider what's needed to meet the moment, right? Ensure not only the right to an abortion, but also that anyone seeking reproductive health care in New Jersey is able to do so safely and with dignity. So as governor, if the reproductive freedom and health equity bill that's currently being debated in the legislature was brought to your desk, would you sign it, and why or why not?
Yeah, I mean, I would support that, but there are some pieces that are missing, and I keep talking about that in terms of equity. There's a bill that Senator Reese has that talks about equity in healthcare. It's not enough to have the laws and the rights and the privileges and procedures if everybody can't access it, right? So you need to make sure that all communities, communities of color, working class communities, communities that are dealing with economic distress, have ability to reach this care, that access to clinics and hospitals, all of that stuff is available. And so it's one thing to talk about democracy, another thing to talk about equity to democracy. And so both of those things need to go hand in hand. And that would be the only trepidation that I have to make sure that everybody has access to this. And not only do we have those bills available, we also have this bill about outing, allowing the teachers to out folks that are transgender, right? And we need to make sure that we push back against that. About a huge portion, I think about 40% of the folks that are homeless, young people that are homeless, are LGBTQ youth who family members throw them out once they find out that they're in fact transgender or lesbian or gay. And so we need to make sure that we protect them, and that bill goes forward in the state to make sure we protect our young people.
That's great. Yeah, definitely agree. Of course, I mentioned the one bill, but there's so much to do, and so I appreciate you touching on other pieces of that agenda that you want to be prioritizing. Moving on to the next topic, you touched on this a little bit before, so you'll have an opportunity to sort of elaborate. It's been reported that the Trump administration has been not just reported. You've mentioned some instances in your community, right? The Trump administration is aggressively detaining immigrant asylum seekers, green card holders, other legal residents for the crime of exercising their rights, or even just having the wrong tattoo, I guess. They're being sent to jails out of state or out of the country with no oversight, due process, sometimes no contact with their lawyers. It's hard to even figure out where they are, and certainly no clear process for reuniting them with their loved ones. So as governor, what will you do to protect New Jerseyans against these politically motivated and really aggressive and lawless immigration detention and deportation actions?
We have to pass the Immigrant Trust Act. I mean, that's at first, if we're not at least agreeing to that, then we should really just be quiet. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to codify what we do in Newark, codify what the AG guidelines say right here in New Jersey, that we can't cooperate with these folks, that we have to allow all our public institutions to have folks that are documented or undocumented have access to them, and we can't question who they are, and there should be penalties assigned to individuals who do so, right? Who violate people's Fourth Amendment rights or their due process rights. We need to be very aggressive about that, straight ahead, more than anything. And so I would say that immediately, right? And then going forward, we add on after that.
Anything that you would say about sort of additional steps that you would want to take in the role of governor after passing the Immigrant Trust Act?
Yeah, I think ultimately, we have to make sure that our institutions in New Jersey, whether it's making sure there's transitional aid or transitional money for folks who lose their job, because people pay into Social Security, they pay into all the other pieces that we have. Immigrants contribute over $1 billion in state and local taxes to make sure those pieces are there. Make sure that people have access to lawyers if they are in fact targeted by ICE, and that we do what we can to protect families in our community. We reach out to community-based organizations and pull them in so they can give us access to communities that are hard to reach, so we could talk to folks and bring them back out. Once we had that raid in Newark, our immunizations went down almost 50%. So we have to communicate with our community-based organizations to go out here and attach people back to the services that we provide, or we'd have a public health emergency on our hands. I mean, this is very real stuff that we're talking about, and these things need to be managed, right? And then we have to be careful about the people we put in authority to do these things who, A, never done it, two, who just came to democracy yesterday, right? Who, like, their pattern of behavior has not been such strong enough that we can believe that they're actually going to do any of these things. But ultimately, once this stuff happens, we have to double down on some of these things. This guy is a complete maniac. The reality is we can't do conventional things because we're not in conventional times.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, and I'm going to steal that line going forward about he just came to democracy recently. I think that's pretty good. Talking about unconventional times again, onto another, topic where the federal government is going to start impacting, the state. Trump and Elon Musk and congressional Republicans are gutting services, right? Whether it's through Doge or whether it's through their budget plans, whatever, right? They want to slash Medicaid, they want to slash Social Security, they want to slash public education and more. I think latest numbers that I've seen, it's somewhere north of 27 or 30 billion dollars in federal funds are flowing through New Jersey, through the state budget, and each of those actions has direct impacts on New Jersey's budget and how it meets its residents' needs or obligations under certain programs, especially vulnerable populations, of course. So again, as governor of New Jersey, you presumably wouldn't have the ability to tell Donald Trump and Elon Musk, "Hey, please don't cut the funding." Right? They're moving ahead with those plans. So what do you propose to do to mitigate harms from Trump's actions to the state budget and assure that every resident of New Jersey is supported to thrive there?
I think there's a few things that we have to do. One, the state of New Jersey actually gives the federal government more money than we get in return. We have to begin figuring out how to leverage that to our benefit, to begin talking about how we withhold some of that stuff, at least temporarily. Maybe we have to go to court, figure it out, and make a decision about what we do. We have to begin to make sure our AG is united with other AGs around the nation to begin to push back against some of this stuff, to get money that was already promised to us, especially entitlement dollars, or them taking dollars because of people's nationality or diversity or equity or their sexual orientation. We have to begin to push back on that immediately. And I would say this again, this is an opportunity for us to go get the money that Christie gave away, to bring back in our budget, right? To expand our surplus, to use our surplus to begin covering down on areas where we think we may be weak at if this guy begins to cut dollars. Then we have to invest money in working families. And why I say that, because that's where the return on our investment is. People believe if you give money to the wealthy, that somehow saves the economy. It does not. Trickle-down economics has never worked. It didn't work when Reagan said it, and it don't work now. So the reality is rich people put money in tax shelters and IRAs and invest dollars. Working class families spend their money not because they need financial literacy, but because they have a whole hell of a lot of bills to pay, right? They have to pay rent and mortgage and tuition and all these things, and healthcare and PSE and G costs, right? So ultimately that money goes back into the economy. So it makes sense to put more money in people's pockets, right? To figure out how to expand Medicare, how to give people child tax credits, how to make people afford childcare, how to give them opportunity for rental assistance. Do what we can to invest in workforce, right? To reduce costs in medical services, reduce insurance costs, to make it easier for working families. The reason why Democrats are getting trampled upon is not because of Republicans, but because of us. We are in a blue state, and we're supposed to represent working families, but it's the working families that are struggling the most. And we really have to flip that on its head and turn it upside down. If we did that and put money back in people's pockets, we'll see our economy begin to grow.
Well said. I got a couple follow-ups. You touched on a number of different policy areas there. So nearly 2 million folks in New Jersey are enrolled in Medicaid or family care, I guess, as it's called in the state. If congressional Republicans end up cutting funding for Medicaid, what kind of impact would that have on healthcare costs across the state? And sort of what actions would you take to sort of account for that those attacks at the federal level?
It would be a grave and deleterious effect on serious families, on their ability to get care, their ability to get medicine, their ability to provide surgery, all of those things, different procedures. It would be incredibly hard for families. I think this is the ideal time for us to talk about self-sufficiency, about a single payer system, about public option. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about reference-based pricing on the state side to pay a specific amount of money above Medicare, and that's it. If we paid 150% above Medicare, we would save the state over $1 billion in 2 or 3 years. It's important for us to bring that money back under the auspices that we're going to lose money from the federal government. So in order to save the program, we got to reduce our healthcare costs. The governor has the Office of Healthcare Accountability and Transparency. We need to give it teeth, and they need to regulate those prices in the hospitals and those insurance companies, get involved in that and reduce those prices and talk about what Medicare for All looks like.
Wow, that was glad to hear that one. On to another really important public service that's under threat. New Jersey receives about 1.2, 1.3 billion in federal funding for education, right? Trump, obviously, he's trying to eliminate the entire Department of Education. What will you do as governor to make up for that funding shortfall and ensure that students and families all across the state have access to a thriving public school system that offers quality education for everybody?
So there are some things that we should have probably done before Trump, but this just made our situation more grave. Obviously we can't just allow him to take money and like poke our lips out and say, that's it. We have to fight that straight ahead. We got to push back against that, take him to court, do whatever it is that we need to do to get our hands on the dollars that are owed to us as Americans, period, point blank. But ultimately, the school funding formula, we have to make sure we fully fund the schools. And we have to change the funding formula so it works, that we target people's income and not their property ownership, right? Sometimes the kids in the school don't represent the people who own the property in the city, and we have to turn that around. We have to invest in schools with English language learners, invest in folks that have special needs or developing disabled students, and invest in communities that figured out a way to make their schools more diverse. So to give them a diversity bonus, a diversity option, an incentive to create diversity in their schools. Invest in schools that have our community schools that open up in the morning and the afternoon, that provide opportunities for teachers to work with community-based organizations to help children out, whether it's in healthcare or mentorship programs or job development, to create that in schools. And then we need to be talking about unified school districts in New Jersey. There are too many school districts in New Jersey. We have more districts than we have cities. We have more superintendents than we have mayors, who get paid a lot more than us, by the way. But we need to need to end that. Like, we have to bring these school systems together, focus on the delivery of instruction, save money, lower people's taxes. At the same time, it's completely inefficient the way we do this.
Thank you. Last sort of follow up on this, like the impacts of federal funding piece. Nearly 300,000 veterans call New Jersey home, of which around 130,000 of them receive benefits through the VA healthcare system. Of course, there's a number of supports and services for veterans. Donald Trump, he's trying to cut 80,000 VA jobs, including medical professionals, crisis hotlines, first responders, folks who just process the claims when vets are seeking services owed to them. How will you ensure that New Jersey's veterans are supported and they're not sort of left out in the cold while Donald Trump is trying to axe all these critical services?
Right. The irony of all of this is that nobody's safe at this point, right? And hopefully to just drive all of us together and see that the same people who are trying to destroy us individually are trying to destroy us collectively. I think ultimately we strengthen the institutions we have here, our VA, we strengthen the services that we provide. We make sure we reach down into the local kind of organizations that exist on a municipal and regional levels to bring veterans together, organize them, to begin to push back around what's happening, which means that our budget and our surplus has to be more robust than it is. We might have a couple of months in our surplus now that needs to grow. How do we grow that? We go get our money. You know what I'm saying? These people we've given. I mean, I'm a mayor. I know for a fact you can't give everybody a tax break. You can't possibly give working families and middle class families a tax break and billionaires at the same time. It's ridiculous. It's not real. We have to get our money back so we can fund the things that are necessary for us.
Well, if it's a choice between middle-class families and billionaires, I know which choice I'm making. Okay, thank you for a few of those budget questions. Want to talk a little bit about democracy and voting rights. So unfortunately, New Jersey has a little bit of a checkered history on corruption, some non-competitive elections, ballots that aren't treating candidates equally, that sort of thing. Of course, significant strides recently, eliminating the county line and having fair office block primary ballots. This big step in New Jersey. Indivisibles across New Jersey were really passionate about the advocacy that went into that. But there are still some concerns that remain about political bosses, right? And what they're doing to prevent fair and competitive elections. So how do you view this problem, and what will you do as governor to ensure elected officials are held accountable to their voters like democracy should work, and that there's an equal playing field for all candidates?
I mean, these people are going to hold on to power as much as they possibly can. I participated in all of those conventions because I think the committee people deserve to hear from us, that we need to give respect to district leaders, the fundamental aspect of democracy. The folks that are other people's neighbors, their family and friends, put them in office to represent them. And this process was wildly uneven. Some of it was good, some of it was horrible. And so we need a uniform process up and down the state. We need to make sure we push back against this new bill that the Senate just put out in the state, that goes halfway towards what the judge said should happen. We need to take them to court and begin to force them to revisit that right away. We need to expand voting access, same day registration. I would even talk about automatic voter registration for 18-year-olds, 16 and 17-year-olds, like in Newark, voting in school board races. These are the things that we need to be doing to go forward on this. But at the same time, we need to make sure we take huge money out of these campaigns and make sure we have some transparency around that as well. I mean, there are so many things that we need to do around making sure voting is accessible to everybody. And the irony is, we have dropped over 200,000 people off the voting rolls in New Jersey, because we say that those people aren't voting consistently. It's like a Mississippi play and not a New Jersey one. It just doesn't make sense that we're doing that. And then we're crying that the Republicans are gaining on us, but we're giving them leeway to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned one particular aspect here. 23 states in the country and the District of Columbia have implemented same-day voter registration, which you mentioned, which would allow any qualified resident of the state to register to vote and cast a ballot at the same time. I can say I've done that myself. It's super convenient. It's like certainly the best way to do it. Meanwhile, the voter registration in the deadline in New Jersey is 21 days before Election Day, right? And so, I have trouble planning what meals I'm going to eat a couple days out. So thinking about planning for an election three weeks away, it's a challenge. So it sounds like you do support New Jersey implementing and adopting same-day voter registration. Can you just say a little bit more about that and how you would plan to get that done as governor?
Absolutely. I think that the precursor to that is 16 and 17-year-olds, automatic registration. I think these discussions are being had already on a state level. I think what needs to happen is that we need to get these individuals, these legislatures to begin to push in that direction. And part of that is attacking that boss system that we talked about before, where legislators are afraid that they won't get reelected. I think as the head Democrat in the state, the governor needs to make an example and begin to appoint the head of a party that is an organizer and not a figurehead and not a person that's doing what we normally do, that begins to send a message up and down the state about how we're going to organize this party, how do we begin to pull people in, what's important to us. And I think hopefully there are people that are going to get elected, not because of the political bosses, but because of their relationships to folks in the community. And they'll have a little bit more girth, a little bit more strength to do the things they really want to do, as opposed to the things that they're being forced to do. So I look forward to that. And I think when this happens, it'll have a kind of domino effect and get us more support, because I think people want to do this. There's no real reason to be opposed to these things, except that you want to maintain the kind of privilege and power that you have as an individual.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, I've got one more question, and then also want to make sure that you can kind of take this and run with it and make sure to cover anything that we didn't have an opportunity to cover that's important, for you and that you want to talk to folks about. So one thing that Indivisibles really value is having open and ongoing relationships with our elected officials, right? We mean democracy like voting rights, but we also mean democracy like this, right? Exactly, calls like this, meetings where folks can engage with the folks that represent them. So if you are elected governor, what will you do to cultivate a relationship with grassroots activists, community organizations, et cetera, throughout the state?
Well, I think in Newark we have that, for good or for bad, and it's not always a great discourse, but it's a discourse, and that's important. Community-based organizations, whether it be environmental organizations around police brutality, organizations around democracy, or organizations, around ballot design, whatever it is, immigrant organizations, we have relationships with them, which is why we can respond in different ways. And our relationships grew stronger around COVID because we needed these organizations at that time more than ever. right? When other people were trying to assist folks in our communities, we weren't, they didn't see us, right? So, for example, the county had all these drive-in, drive-up places where you get testing, but I told them 50% of the people in Newark don't own a car and they can't get to those sites. We need walk up, and we need to be able to go into communities where people are scared to come out. And our community-based organizations helped us do that. Ironbound Community Corporation, Clear Hill Community Action, UVSO, La Casa de Don Pedro. And I think statewide, these organizations exist. And what we should do is partner with them and fund them and help us change people's lives. We do that not just on the social justice side, we do that on criminal justice side, around reduction of violence in our city. We have a 61% reduction in homicides based on our relationship with CBI-based organizations. I think all of those things are important because government can't do it alone. And look, anybody who believes they can do it, that's why I don't like people always saying, I did this, I did that, I did this. I didn't do anything. Like, we did this together. Like, ultimately, I mean, all I'm doing is creating an environment so people can get these things done collectively. But I haven't done anything on my own. This stuff is too heavy for me to carry by myself. I need community-based organizations and other people to help me march difficult things. Unless what you're doing is light and small and myopic, then of course you can do it by yourself. But the bigger it is, the more people you need. And that's just the reality of it. I wanted to go on and say, we focus on Donald Trump a lot, and we focus on the Republicans a lot. And those people are completely, Donald Trump is, at this point, has lost his complete mind. And ultimately, he's doing things that has never been done in this country. He is violating people's rights, snatching the floor from under working families. He is going all the way to the wall with everything he can do, undermining the Constitution, disobeying the courts, shutting down institutions, firing federal workers. But ultimately, our problem is to me, not really him, but us. Our problem is the Democratic Party, right? And our inability to stand true to what it is that we said. We gave him the opportunity to platform because we keep running to the middle and moving away from what it is that we believe. I was arguing with a Democrat who said that we need to do what Clinton did in the Reagan-Bush era. I said, well, I didn't agree with Reagan-Bush did it, but ultimately this guy here is not Reagan-Bush. He's a lot more advanced, crazy than those guys. And at the end of the day, you can't do normal stuff because these times aren't normal. It's just not normal times. We can't be the party of working families, and working families are the people that are struggling the most in blue states. We have to be able to tax millionaires. We have to be able to reduce healthcare costs. We have to be able to give people access to healthcare, access to childcare, access to education, access to all of the things that we say support our economy, make sure it is inclusive and not discriminatory, and protect immigrants, LGBTQ community. And we have to be able to do that stuff. If we can't do it, we just talking.
You had two of our sort of key tenets with Indivisible is like we gotta be bold in the quest to fight for our democracy and provide for our communities, and that democracy is a group project, right? That no one's doing this alone. I really like what you said. It's not about what I did; it's about what we did. And I think that was a really great point. Those were our questions. Any sort of final closing thoughts, Mayor Baraka, before we close out?
I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to talk. And, the reason I went on that theme at the end is because when I go different places, people are always concerned about our ability to win, about the Democrats' ability to win. We're always concerned about that, which is interesting to me. In a state where there's 800,000 more registered Democrats than anyone else, it's usually an excuse for people to go to the middle. Are we afraid? The question is, why aren't we winning, right? Not can we win? Because we can, because we're worried about who's running instead of what they're running on. Instead of chasing these people to come into the party, what about the people that already signed up? The 500,000 people that stayed home in the Kamala Harris race, the over 1 million Democrats that stayed home when Phil Murphy won his last race. And he still won, by the way, by 3 points, but over 1 million Democrats stayed home. And the question becomes why? Who can inspire them? Who can give them hope? Why are they going out to vote? And why did you go out to vote and leave 3 people in your house who didn't vote, right? That's the real question, right? Because you're not inspired and you don't really believe the stuff or the people you're voting for. You're doing harm reduction, voting for the people who are going to do you less harm. And it's damn well time that we stop that. Like, that we have to, people have been living fat on this thing and have turned the Democratic Party into a group of elitists that folks can't get near. We got to change that. We got to turn that upside down, right side up, and get it right, and stop allowing these people to claim that they're the party of the working class when we know that's a damn lie, right? We know that. We know this guy said he's going to protect immigrants. The first thing he do, he deports everybody, not just folks who violated the law, but he deports everybody, anybody who disagrees with him. I mean, he gets rid of Medicaid, veteran benefits, anything and everybody. This guy is an oligarch. They're creating a plutocracy, and Democrats aided and abetted in that, because we should have governed the right way when we had the horseless reins. We should have governed the right way and took care of working class families. And we can do that in New Jersey, finally, and be the first voice that speaks back against Donald Trump in this November. So I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak today. If we fight, we win, right?
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, Mayor Baraka, for taking the time to engage with us in New Jersey's Indivisible movement.
You got it, man.
I appreciate it. Marla, handing the mic back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Ras Baraka, both for your time, for joining us, for your inspiring words. I'd also like to thank the ION Candidate Evaluation Committee for coordinating this forum, putting all the questions together from our network. And I especially want to thank all of our attendees for tuning in tonight. We do have a whole series of events coming up, so make sure that you are registering for our future interviews. Tomorrow we have Mikey Sherrill, then Sean Spiller, then Steve Fulop on Thursday. So you can register for that event or those events if you haven't already at the link on your screen, and that will also be dropped into the chat. Following the series of interviews next week, we also have the April 7th ION statewide meeting for all indivisibles in the state of New Jersey. And we invite you to attend that along with us. We will be talking about the race for governor, your feedback on the candidates, and ways to engage in the primary. So please make sure that you're coming to that as well. And of course, there is our mass mobilization. It wouldn't be an Indivisible call if we didn't have a call to action for you. So please make sure that you are registering or attending or hosting. It's not too late. If you don't have one in your area for you to attend, you can host one on Saturday, April 5 is our hands-off event. Really important that we have as many people turning out as possible. I believe last count we had 1,000 events, and we've got lots of people registered, but we need you to be out there with us as well. We want to make sure that you keep an eye out for the follow-up email. The email will contain all the links that we've shared on this call and more. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic night. We look forward to seeing you again. Bye, all.